ready when you are. Okay, thank you. Everyone, welcome to ACDC. This is number 167. It's PM issue 1754 in the repo here. There's a link to the agenda in the chat. So yeah, there's quite a bit on the agenda today. So let's go ahead and get started. Some things with Fisiana and some things with Glamsterdam. So first up, I figured I'd ask if there's anything to touch on with DevNet 3. As far as I know, it's still chugging along, but might just, yeah, I don't know if there's anything. Barnabas or Perry, I don't know if you're on the call and have something to add.
Nothing really to add. It is still going forward. There's a couple of bugs that we have discovered regarding database usage and not dropping some blobs on Loadster side, but has been sorted out basically.
Okay, cool. Then let's jump into testnet. So I believe since last week's ACD, we had Haleshi BPO2 and also the Sepolia fork. As far as I've seen, they generally went well. There was some turbulence, more on the operations side, but I don't think there were any client issues. Anyone have anything else to add to either of those events? There you go.
Yeah, nothing really specific to these events, but just to say that we have discovered a bug in the way we were subscribing to column subnets. Essentially, we were only subscribing to all subnets in case you configure the node as a super node. Otherwise, if you are running enough validators but without the flag, Teku was only subscribing to 8 subnets. So we haven't discovered that before because essentially the node is still able to get from EL plus from RPC calls and manage to sync up the blocks in time. But yeah, something is something that we are fixing. And we are also working on some improvement on the sampler. So we would like to have another release for Hoodie with these improvements in. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, nice find. Anything else on Haleshi or Sepolia? Okay. So far, the testnets have gone really well. Definitely no issues like Pectra, so that's really exciting to see. Next up, Frederick here wanted to give an overview of the Fisiana contest that I believe has wrapped up. Let's see. Yeah, ended on the 13th. So Frederick, are you here?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the contest ended on Monday. So right now there's this process of doing a final review of the severities of the findings, but all in all, I would say that there hasn't been anything that's caused any reason to postpone the hard forks basically. So it seems like we're good.
Okay.
We
Yeah,
will release a full list of vulnerabilities, etc. Once it's done, probably in a few weeks from now.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, also exciting to hear. No major issues there. Okay. Next up, I did want to touch on the different blob APIs. So I think some of this caught some people off guard. There's the proof change moving from the 4844 style blobs to the pure dust style blobs. The first place you'd probably run into this is if you're submitting blobs, say to the execution layer, node there. And Then also there have been some tweaks to the APIs to read blobs from the CL. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything here. Essentially, yeah, I think there is some confusion around which nodes do what, or sorry, like which implementations do what. I know that some clients try to maintain some of the previous behavior as a bit of a bridge, but ultimately, yeah, that's kind of where we're at. I think most of the things have been sorted out by now. But yeah, I guess if you're listening and this is a surprise or you're not sure what we're talking about, please reach out to someone on this call. We'd all be happy to help you here. Yeah, Justin here's asking which L2s were affected. A good number of them. Me and I think many others of us here have been talking to them this week. I don't necessarily want to call anyone out, but some rollups seem to be on top of it and are ready. I think some either weren't following ACD as closely and yeah, missed this, or they also, I mean, one thing that came up was the EIP itself says it's backwards compatible, which when I read that, I think that means backwards compatible with respect to, protocol features. And to me, the RPC kind of sits outside the protocol. But I think taken together, yeah, there were some miscommunications there. Yeah, Lucas here says, by the way, another mind's considering enabling conversion like Geth. Yeah. So if anyone has anything to add here, that would be nice. Although part of the issue was people not listening to ACD. So I don't know if this is the right forum to get that information out. Marius?
Yeah, I think part of the problem was that it wasn't well communicated on the EF blog post, and it's also not super well communicated in the EIP itself. The EIP itself says that it's fully backwards compatible, which on some level it is, but I think just it would be nice if EIP editors would also just put some lines about RPC changes that are needed for the IPs in, so that we don't have this get into this miscommunication again in the future.
Yep, definitely good idea. Dustin had a good question here. Is there basically some way to, make sure this doesn't happen last minute in the event there are changes like this in the future? Something else that came up is different users testing on DevNets. So something that's probably good for us to try to do, with feature forks when we get to the final DevNet. So for example, we have Fusaka DevNet 3, and generally it's been out there and stable. It would be nice then if, for example, rollups, different users could go and test there. And part of the thing here is that, I think for most of us here, Mainnet is like, quote, our production environment. The test nets are more our staging. And so, if there are things like this that come up at the last minute, that's like exactly why you have a staging environment before production. Many of the rollups, it sounds like treat the test nets also as production. So then they don't quite have this like testing ground. One thing we could offer is once we get to, very late stage dev nets for a given fork, have people deploy there and work through some of these things ahead of time. So that's definitely something to keep in mind moving forward. Yeah, another good point from Nixo. We had Mekong for Pectra, which is kind of like a long-standing user-facing testnet. It's kind of a mouthful. But yeah, I mean, part of it is I think we were also just trying to move faster here as a group, and yeah, didn't quite have time for something like that. Okay, there's a lot of stuff in the chat. People can read this, I suppose. Like Peter here mentions, testing on a shadow fork would be easier than DevNets. Yeah, I think this is something we'll need to work through. I think that's partly why, these different users haven't deployed to DevNets. I think it's not straightforward for them to target these new environments. But in any case, yeah, I think something altogether we can work on. So, related to that, there is a comment here on the agenda from Cohen MTB1 from Aztec. They have a point here around blob retrieval. I don't think this is directly related to the APIs, but it is touching on bandwidth concerns and the more general issue of like how we expect people to retrieve blobs under PeerDOS. I think yeah, Cohen, you're here. Would you like to say anything else?
I think it kind of speaks for itself. But the basically I think there's currently no really good way for L2s to be able to retrieve blobs, or at least if you're running decentralized sequencers to allow the node of the L2 to be able to retrieve blobs on like the home staker level. That's kind of where our concern is. Basically, currently in the current system, we have to require everyone to run supernodes, which is not ideal given the bandwidth constraints.
Yeah, understood. Let me grab a link here to your post. There's a nice message here on eighth magicians going through this issue. I think there's kind of two types of solutions you have here. One is this notion of like a light supernode. There's also the other option essentially of like custom tooling somehow. Yeah, I think so. I know at least some of us at the EF were discussing this over the last day or so, and yeah, there's probably something here with this like light supernode operation style. Yeah, so thanks for flagging, and I don't know if anyone has had a chance to look at this and has anything else to add. Otherwise, we'll just keep it on the table and see what we can do there. Let's see. Yeah, Dustin's pointing out here in the chat that basically there is a tension here between how PeerDOS works and how you get the blobs. I think one thing that Cohen might be asking for is a middle ground where rather than trying to get everything, you just get half the columns. Because then from there you can reconstruct the blob and then you're kind of good to go. Terrence is also saying, yeah, a lot of blobs are in the midpool, so you can get them from there. And there was some stuff there that Cohen also mentioned around, yeah, essentially like separate tooling. I think there's a bit of a design space here, depending on, for example, what the rollup is, how they work, what their use case is, and making that happen. So, again, lots of comments in the chat. I don't know if anyone wants to speak up. Otherwise, I would suggest we take.
Sorry, just for so we don't want to a node to actually signal that is custodying all the nodes, but you want to have a kind of a middle ground node that subscribe to all subnet and have a kind of tiny window of storing those blobs just to serve the API and then throw them away in something like that.
Yeah, that would be super helpful. Basically, just like a supernode that only custodies like 4 columns or like whatever the 4 is the minimum currently, and then
yeah. So you don't want to actually to signal that you are a supernode in the custody ENR, because otherwise you get disconnected. But in practice, you want to listen to all the nodes, all the columns. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, correct.
Cool.
Notice.
Prism is implementing precisely that. Exactly what Enrico said, where you're just custoding the minimal, but sampling for more until you can recover. However, I believe that for this particular issue, and for most users, what I believe is what's happening in Aztec, and I know it's happening for, as a matter of fact, for Arbitrum, this would be much easier to be treated on the EL. You just track on the EL the transactions with blobs that you are interested in, and the EL should just save those. So this would be a useful flag on the EL side. Just save me the blobs from the transactions that I'm interested in.
Is that sufficiently reliable? I mean, in practice, but not maybe in.
If you're, I mean, for the cases that I have in mind, which is, for example, a rollup that is sending these transactions in the public mempool, then yes, because the mempool today is not sharded, and it's always found there. And then you could just have as a fallback the CL. But anyways, as I said, Prism is already implementing this feature.
One thing is having the consensus layer dealing with grabbing everything. Another one is relying on a mempool that can be flushed out, or yeah, it's a different level of reliability in my mind.
Okay. So yeah, Cohen, thanks for flagging this. There was another comment here I won't read right now on this post, but yeah, I think if people want to engage, either reach out to the various rollouts to flag this, or go to Heath Magicians here. And yeah, it sounds like there are adjustments on the way to facilitate this use case. And if not, there are other options. Manu?
Yeah, just to say, currently a supernode store 128 proofs and 128 cells. Something we could do is only storing 64 cells, but 128 proofs. Proofs are very cheap to store, but expensive to reconstruct, and cells are expensive to store, but cheap to reconstruct. This way, we could save for a supernode, we could save up to almost 50% of disk usage.
Yeah, I think the concern is more bandwidth here, but yeah, that's also helpful on storage as well. A roll-up's definitely going to need to store all of their blocks, which is probably equivalent to all of their blobs. Okay. Anything else on the topic? I think one takeaway, again, if you're listening, as a non-core dev, if you have an issue here, please reach out. I think the changes are pretty straightforward, but there have been some changes. And yeah, also I'll call out Marius's blog post from the EF that was linked somewhere in the chat. Yeah, walking through some of these changes. Okay. So then another tangential thing to this is an RFC from Jimmy, I believe. Let me grab the link here. So I don't know if he's here, but essentially what this does is change a condition in the spec that I believe now is should, and the proposal is to change it to may. And this is basically let you reduce the bandwidth requirements for non-super nodes. I was talking, okay, Chaba already commented on here. I think he brought up the point that this might, I'm actually not sure. I need to catch up on this. But I did want to call this out. I don't know if anyone's had time to take a look. From what I've seen from Chaba, I think there's some intricacies here between gossip sub and how the propagation actually works that may not mean this is that important. I don't know if Chaba's here. He could say more right now. But if not, yeah, please take a look here. This might be another small change we want to add, again, to help with some of these rough edges. Okay. Then next on the agenda, Fusaka mainnet, the time we've likely all been waiting for. So if we want to ship Fusaka this year, the time is actually pretty much now to go ahead and start talking about this. Barnabas had a proposal here. Again, let me grab this link that would put mainnet on December 3rd, and then schedule our two BPOs, one of them on December 17th, and then one into next year on January 7th. And the reason I wanted to bring this up today, or at least I think we should talk about it today, is that if we want to aim for December 3rd with Fusaka on mainnet, that would imply, following our process, that we have essentially everything ready by November 3rd, which is actually coming up quite soon. So that would mean client releases by then. We'd get another EF blog post out, and everything there. So I think today I just wanted to get a temp check from whoever's present on the feasibility of this, and if it looks good today, then I'd take this to ACD next week, and that might even be the call where we formally set the dates once we get sign off from both CL and EL clients. Frederick.
Yeah, I just want to say that if we do decide this today, then we do a divergence. Well, maybe not a divergence, but kind of go against the process at least that's been set up with regards to upgrades. As we do say, Mainnet should not have an upgrade date set until all testnets have been upgraded. And also, yeah, I mean, it's a should, but I think it's something worth considering at least if we need to set it now or if we should set it at a later stage.
Yeah, there's something there. So I think it will take us, at least this call, next call, to actually like quote set the dates. And at that point, we would have moved much further along. Let me double check when hoodie is, because then that's another question. Let's see, hoodies the 12th of November. So, oh no, sorry, the 20th of October. So let me just run through the calendar here. That would basically be next ACDC. And so following the process, I think there's a reading where basically we would formally set the dates on the 30th, so 2 weeks from now. I wanted to go ahead and bring this up now because, if we say on the 30th, hey, let's have releases by the 3rd, that's only a few days for clients to actually do that. So I think we're pipelining things a bit, but also I think there is a reading that's consistent with the process document that we have. So thanks for bringing that up. We do have the process for a good reason. Let's see. There were some comments in the chat here around going ahead and shipping it, moving ahead with November 3rd. Anyone think that that would be an issue? Aiming for mainnet releases on November 3rd and then mainnet on December 3rd. And again, this is just a temp check. I think we'll probably need another week or two to actually get to an official determination of the dates. I've not seen anything in the chat yet around any issues there. I'll also be reaching out to each client team async, just in case there's other things that come up, but okay. Generally, I would take this as a thumbs up for the temperature check. And I think the next step then would be to bring this to next week's ACD and again, just make sure everything's good on the EL side. But otherwise, yeah, I think we're looking good there. Let me find the agenda. So cool. And I think the last thing with Fusaka today is just calling out Sepolia BPO next week. I should say BPO1. Let's see, that is, I believe this is still Tuesday UTC. Again, I think we all know where to find the times, but yeah, keep that on your radar as the next Fusaka event. Okay, that was all I had for Fusaka. Anything else that we should bring up today? Okay, then we will move to Glamsterdam. So with Glamsterdam, yeah, as we see, Fusaka is moving along well, so it's definitely time to start thinking about Glamsterdam. The first agenda item here is following up on the last call we had with Trustless Payments and EPBS. So last call, someone had brought up, I think there's a presentation from Lynn. So he had brought up some concerns around trustless payments, essentially pointing to the complexity of the feature and, essentially if it's like the right time to enshrine this part of EPBS. There was an EPBS breakout last week. There was more discussion, but ultimately, I don't think there was a resolution either way. What I would say at the moment, well, maybe I'll pause there. Is there anything anyone would like to add on this topic right now? Yeah, Len?
Yeah. So yeah, as a person who kind of reopened this whole can of worms, I can share what my thoughts are right now. So like I still do believe that we like should have separated this EIP, and I do think that trustless payments like it was under discussed, especially compared to like the complexity, and the complexity here being like the ecosystem impact or the user impact complexity that this has. I think it wasn't discussed enough compared to that. But like we discussed in last week's breakout room, that let us raise points that doing EPBS without trustless payments, it's also like under discussed. We don't have like concrete specs, and like there were some open problems that he mentioned. And another thing is that we had discussions around like how do we support trust off protocol payments within the clients as a standard, like not as like each client implement on their own or like have forks. We can have like standards that are shared among the clients that work out of the box for the off protocol payments. Having such things will like minimize the impact to the ecosystem, which is, I think, a good direction. I think a lot of people are like did not have the impression that like the core devs were open to this. So like it's very, which maybe they did, but like that was impression. So I think it's very nice to see discussion on that direction. So like while in conclusion, like while I still do think that it's better to be separated and it was better to have been separated, like I think we should have had this discussion much earlier. I think the EIP SFIing process, like there's probably some improvements that can be made around this or how we split or bundle EIPs together. But personally, I won't like, based on the Poto's point and that fact that off-protocol payments is going to be properly supported, I'm not going to push like further on the separation. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, thank you. Enrico?
Just a general comment. So, given that at the moment they are spec'd out together, so I'd like to have a split in the spec just after we decided that they should come separated and the PPS should go in without trustless payment. So I would like to not be in a world where we end up having them both shipped, and then we had spent a lot of time separating things and have a trustless payment as a separate feature, and this will be a waste of time. So I think like we should accept what we have now and keep discussing. And if we decide that we want to postpone just trustless, let's then do the job of separating spec and let go EPPS without in.
Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely many trade-offs here around how we go about shipping this. Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just echo some of the things. I think Lynn's take was pretty decent as well, and so was Enrico's. I like sorry, I'm a little bit blanking here. Like it does seem easy to look at EPBS and see it as like a monolith, or as an opinionated design, but we did do a fair amount of exploring everything from a lot of different angles. And I mean, I guess if there were more people involved for longer periods of time, we could come up with some kind of progressive spec of separating out these features while keeping most of the things. But in terms of like, I think where we ended up, I guess my personal opinion is like, sometimes you have to work with the information you have at the time. And it would be quite a bit of work to separate out things, try to come up with a bunch of different designs. I mean, the only design that we even had for trustless payments was from Dappline, and it was rushed. So he didn't have much time, but like that would cut out a lot of the benefits of removing like the blinded blocks and code paths and things that you get from block payload separation. So anyway, yeah, it's like I largely agree. At this point, it would just take more time to separate out these things. It would just slow us down. There may be improvements to EPBS that we can make in V2 in the future, some of which that I've thought about, but right now for a V1, I think we're in a fine place.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Dimitri.
Yeah, hello there. Kind of different comment from my side. So we've been taking a look at the current design of the trustless payments from the point of view of the staking protocol maintenance, especially for LiDAR. And there are two, but like even though I genuinely support the trustless payments idea, I really want to voice out that the current proposed design adds a bit of a complexity on both off-chain and on-chain support for this thing. So, for example, should the staking protocol like Lido, Rocket Pool, or whoever else decide to support this builder validators within a protocol, the all of the interactions regarding like proving balances and keeping the accounting tight between the consensus layer and the protocol becomes pretty contentious, I would say. And the other thing is that since trustless payments do not guarantee that they will be the only way to make payments, and we will effectively have two markets, so the same as we have right now, which is an off-chain one, and the on-chain one with this trustless payments, it basically means that the amount of work that should be done by the protocol to ensure that all of the validators within a protocol behave according to the rules is effectively doubled, because now you need not only to look at the off-chain market, which we currently do, and I think we are pretty successful in it. But with the introduction of the trustless payments, again, given that they will exist in parallel to the existing off-chain market, we will now have to do the second amount of work to also keep an eye on trustless payments and making sure that everything is right with the trustless payments as well. So again, I genuinely support the idea of trustless payments. However, I really want to voice out that it would add complexity not just for core developers, but for the staking protocols as well, should they ever decide to support validators, or even if they will not decide to support building validators, they will still have like a significant portion of additional efforts to be done with regards to off-chain monitoring.
Yeah, thanks. Let's see. Is there? Oh, Francesco.
Yeah, just a quick comment responding to Mark. I think it's a bit of a myth that, like, yes, we did do a lot of this exploration of the design space a few months ago, but I think like it was with a different goal than just saying like splitting up the current EIP. It was more saying like, okay, are there different ways to do this? Like that maybe, I don't know, where like you don't have the commitment or like a bunch of other stuff that give us better properties. Whereas if the goal is just the more restricted, just do exactly the same kind of pipeline in the current EIP does, but don't have all of this other stuff that's sort of on top of it. We know how to do that. Like it's possible to do that. Yes, no one has written a spec for this because I think like I mean, it seems a bit pointless to do when I don't know, like we haven't really decided that this is something we actually want, but like it's really not that complicated to just not do the whole trustless payment part and just say, for example, like we were discussing on Discord, you can just have a pub key instead of the builder index. Now you don't need stake builders anymore, and you do everything else exactly the same, except you don't have the payment, you don't have staking, and so on. Now, should we do this? I don't know. I've not been arguing to do this. I've not been like writing a spec for this, but just I think, yeah, like we shouldn't bring up, I think, as an argument the fact that like, oh, we don't know how to do this, it's impossible. Like I think it's a bit like yeah, I mean, it's just not true. And yeah, I mean, still I kind of agree with a lot of what's been said around, I don't know, it is quite late in the process, and like if the goal is just to save some time, it's probably not going to save any time. So I think if we really wanted to do something like this, then it has to be like a bigger kind of decision around like complexity and more like kind of future considerations. But yeah, I think it might well be that at this point we should just go with this design regardless.
Thank you. Sophia?
Yeah, I don't think that we should split out the EIP and have a separate one for trustless payments. Like a lot of other people, I'm concerned that that would delay actually shipping the hard fork, or even that EPBS could go the way of pure DOS and we have to split Glamsterdam. Acknowledging that we should have had these discussions months ago, I think that we should try to make all the hard decisions around trustless payments and other elements of EPBS design as soon as possible. From a decision tree standpoint, I think that it would be the easiest to decide on this if we had a judgment on the severity of the free option problem. I do know that that is very difficult to, at least for me, to have a strong opinion on. But if you think that the free option problem is quite severe or would have negative outcomes, then it seems to me we should remove trustless payments and use Lynn's design that commits to the parent header. If not, I'm not sure that's dispositive of including trustless payments, but it does mean that I think we should have a dual PTC deadline, which is another, I think from at least conceptually quite large design aspect of EPBS that we have sort of been ignoring.
Okay.
Just to, oh sorry, to
No,
respond
go ahead.
to that, I think like the free option problem, I do agree it's a problem, but I think it should be discussed completely separately from removing trustless payments. I think you can have trustless payment design that has free option problem or doesn't have free option problem. I think they're pretty independent. So I do agree we should discuss it, but I think leave it out of this specific discussion for now.
Okay. Any other comments while we're here? That I was surprised there were so many hands. Okay. So yeah, I think this conversation highlights that this is, I don't think contentious is necessarily the right word, but there's just a lot here, and there are potentially large impacts. There are many different dimensions to consider, like how quickly we can ship the feature, how do we think about it with respect to governance, the actual, implementation and complexity of the thing itself. From what I'm hearing, it doesn't sound like anyone's making the strong case to take them out. And that would just suggest leaving the thing as it is. Acknowledging the fact that it does add some complexity in different ways. And that's just a choice we're making as a core developer community. So at least where I'm at right now is I think we leave things as is. And keep moving forward with Glamsterdam. This unblocks, implementation on the feature, so we can actually ship the thing instead of spending, another number of calls going ahead and, just discussing it in circles. So I think that's a good summary of where we're at now. Any last words? I do think one thing that would change here is, again, with any EIP, if it came out, later in the process that there was actually a security issue, which I don't really foresee with this, but there is always an option we need to reevaluate. But my assessment at the moment, again, talking to many of you and trying to summarize, the conversation just now, I think we're in a pretty good spot. So I'd say leave as is. Any final comments? Okay, then that is settled. We have trustless payments as is in the IP. Okay. So we should be good there. I could ask about implementation progress, but I don't think there's been much. People have been busy with Fusaka, and also we are kind of waiting on this question to move forward. So that being said, it would be nice to see DevNets sometime this year. So just have that on your radar. I know, again, it'll be busy with Fusaka, but another thing on the plate. Next up, we have, okay, so this was about, let me just double check this comment. Okay, so Etan brought this up. There's a question. Let me address this. Ansgar. I don't know what you mean, Ansgar. Headliner protection status.
I just wanted to check because there was some requests in chat of people who said, look, let's just make a final decision, meaning not just the decision of leaving it in the EIP as it is, but also saying on future ACD calls about Glamsterdam, it would be basically out of scope of limits to revisit removing it at all, other than, of course, for security considerations, which, I mean, yes, that's always possible, or for other like completely unforeseen major issues coming up around it, but not as in just as part of a normal governance conversation, versus just the decision of saying it stays in the EIP, we move forward, and in case we decide governance-wise to remove it later, we do it then. I think those two are meaningful enough separate to just decide which of the two paths we just decided to go on.
Yeah, it seems like we're deciding now. Like, I think it would be hard. Yeah, okay. So I guess you're suggesting like there could be a situation in some weeks where it's like, hey, maybe because of other EIPs we want to include, then we want to reevaluate this. I think given the way the headliners worked, I think then that, yeah, this is the feature, this is the headliner, and that includes trustless payments. So then it would be really weird to then try to take it out because of some other EIP that was not a headliner.
Yeah, then I just wanted to ask one last comment on this, and I understand most people disagree with me on this, but I think as a matter of fact, this will mean that we will not ship fossil in Amsterdam. I understand that's a weird connection to draw because there's no direct connection between those two features, but we already, as everyone I talked to already is concerned about the CL side of Glamsterdam being the slower one this time around, that it's heavier because EPBS just is a really big feature. And that we're basically already kind of at the limit. And as we now we'll also talk in general about like some scoping, that really we should only add like very, very minor features, if anything, on the CL side, and mostly keep it as is scope wise. That was my motivation why I kind of also when this was proposed to try and take in and at least considering removing stake builders, so we would have a bit more headroom to add fossil. I personally really think it should be in Amsterdam, but I also don't think we can just like make it a 12 months fork to get there. Yeah, I understand people probably think these are orthogonal decisions. I don't, but if we want to make it a final decision and then people don't think that means we exclude fossil, then that's fine with me.
I think we can have the conversation about fossil once we get there. I think that'll be pretty soon and a few calls coming up. But all of that being said, we went through the process of having a theme for the headliner selection. That theme was scaling. I think it's been hard for people to justify fossil as a scaling EIP. And so that's why we have what we have today. Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. I think given the decisions we made, we should stick to EPBS as is, including trustless payments, and move forward there. It would be strange to pull it out later just because we want to include something else down the line. Okay. Thank you, Oscar. I will go back to the agenda item we had here. So Eton brought this up. I think, again, it's a bit early because we aren't quite to the stage where we should be discussing other Glamsterdam EIPs in earnest, but he did want to call out EIP 7688. This introduces generalized indices, which I think most of us have seen this feature by now, and he's proposing to put it into the fork. So again, I don't think we should necessarily discuss it much further today. Because we will talk about inclusion around the full set of PFI DIPs again in a few calls. What we had said is we'd wait until Fusaka mainnet date was set, which again should be coming up soon. Then we can turn to the rest of the Glamsterdam scope. That being said, he did want to bring this up. And I will also call out that Diva and Lido both gave support for this EIP. On the agenda, and you can look at the comments there if you want to see more. So let me just make sure I got everything. Yeah, okay. That was everything on the spec for Amsterdam. Anything else that we'd like to discuss today? There's some more comments in the chat that we could touch on if people would like to, because we do have some time. I mean, it looks like it's coming down to the fossil question, which again, this is the tricky thing because we have one headliner essentially, and it's hard to do both. They're both relatively big EIPs. Barnabas is asking why not discuss fossil. I'm not sure people are prepared, honestly. We'd also want to discuss in the context of all the other PFI EIPs, and there's actually quite a long list. I was just looking at the meta EIP yesterday. Let me go find it. There's quite a bit that's been proposed. This is EIP 7773, and yeah, there's 29 EIPs here. So we're gonna have fun sorting through all of those. But ultimately, yeah, I think it's a bit early, honestly. Yeah, Dimitri's asking about 7688. So it's a bit early to discuss inclusion. It should be in this PFI list, and if not, I saw it somewhere. Yeah, it's here. So it's on the meta EIP, and then the way that we're handling this is we wanted to wait until Fusaka's out the door, and then we would turn to talking about the rest of the Glamsterdam scope. So it's, again, the call today is just that it's been PFI'd, and we will discuss further in probably 2 or 3 calls once we have Fusaka more settled. Kev's asking about the max blobs flag. I think that's what you mean, Kev, right? Yeah. I don't think it's needed. Clients are working on support, but yeah, it's definitely there. Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, we will go ahead and wrap up for the day. Okay, thank you all. And again, yeah, keep an eye on Sepolia. We have VPOM coming up next week. Thank you all. I'll see you next time.